you have to have a smartphone, right? That's how it works. That's where the button is. You press to get a car.
And Uber wasn't one of your investments, right?
No.
So this is in your personal life. You needed Uber.
Yes. Yes.
So how many apps do you have?
Like, what do you do without Uber? You have to like somehow get a taxi, right? You just stand in the street, wave your hand for 20 minutes. I remember what it used to be like. That's what you did. Right?
So now I'm going to ask you to get your phone out and tell us what apps you have on that phone. I think we need a full confession here before we can.
All right. Looks like I still have some battery left. Well, I have Uber. I have 4 apps.
4 apps.
So yeah, I have 4 apps. That's not very many, huh? Well, all the apps that I have are things that I actually need. You know, there's no games or anything like that. So I have Uber, and I have Pebble, because I need that to talk to the Pebble Watch. And I have Lockatron, because I need that to like get into our office. And I have Order Ahead, because I need that to order lunch. They're all very practical.
You've made the leap. You've made the leap.
I can get in an Uber, get to a place, I can get into it, I can get food, and I can talk to my watch. And actually 3 of those, all of those except Uber, will be funded. But I don't have everybody's app on here. Sorry if there's any startups we funded.
So as you say, Uber couldn't exist without the smartphone.
Yes.
So what, as an investor, what does this new platform represent?
Well, I think this is a much, you guys probably already think mobile phones are a big deal. And I think they're an even bigger deal than we realize now. Because they're not just some little computer that you carry around in your pocket. Do you guys know this idea Mark Andreessen wrote about software eating the world? Well, Uber is a great example of it, right? Like, who knew that there would be a startup limo company, right? There were limo companies before, but it didn't seem like something where, like, software and startups even applied. But once everybody has this in their hands, there's all kinds of new things you can do. Not just things. Nobody thinks of Uber as a mobile app. It has a mobile app, but it's not Angry Birds, right? So the fact that these things are out there in the world makes all kinds of new things possible. All kinds of ideas that were bad ideas are now good ideas because of this.
Well, let's look at some of the things you have funded.
Yeah.
What about Airbnb? Probably one of the better names we all know. How is that affected by mobile? And same kind of idea as Uber, I suppose. It's organising people to do things that they couldn't do before.
Well, the host and the guest and the host have to coordinate their efforts, right? And so they both want to have some kind of communication device on them. When someone shows up or is on their way to an Airbnb place, I guess an Airbnb, they want to be able to say so. And then the host needs to know, I need to go and let them in or give them the key. And so that really helps to have mobile apps too, or at least mobile devices.
Mm-hmm. So when you, at Y Combinator, look at new ideas that come through the door.
Yeah.
By the way, we're going to have to dig into some of the secrets of Y Combinator. I'm sure you all know Paul's incubator, but definitely the blue chip amongst incubators at the moment.
The orange chip.
Get on the orange chip. Huge competition to get on the program. But how do you actually filter when people and ideas come to you? And what part does mobile at the moment play in how you see the world? Are you actually looking for mobile ideas, mobile strategies, apps? How do you
Yeah. I think it's one of the giant trends at the moment. And so we're looking for things. One class of things I'm looking for. Any idea of the following type is probably a good startup idea. If you could replace any specific device with an app running on a mobile device. Some pundit will probably make up some name for this. Maybe there already is one, right? But all the individual little things like music players and GPSs and cameras, all these little things you would carry around with you, are all being replaced by a single device and then software. It's so much more flexible that way. Software has some really great advantages. You can update it in real time, among other And so any idea of that type, anything that you can think of where you could replace something with software running on a mobile device is probably a good idea. That's always exciting. Other things we're looking for is ideas where the reason it's now possible is that you can coordinate people because you can assume that they all have smartphones, right? And so Uber is an example of that. The passengers have to have a smartphone and the drivers have a smartphone, and they coordinate, meeting using their phones. We funded a startup called DoorDash that delivers food that relies on a network of drivers that now you can all assume have smartphones, right? So you can use smartphones. There's a whole subset of ideas like Uber and DoorDash where you can get the work done by a group of people who are sort of ad hoc employees, right? They're not working 9 to 5 as employees for the company. They just like check in and check out. But the pool of people, the sort of worker pool, can coordinate their efforts with phones.
These are fascinating ideas, but we're starting to see creeping regulation in some of these areas. Obviously the taxi cab commissions and unions are creeping in. They're trying.
They're trying to kill Uber city by city.
Well, indeed, and people are starting to ask questions about the protection for workers involved in these kinds of areas and so on. How do you see that in general? Is this just a kind of the last throes of the old economy trying to fight back and we should just forget about it and plow ahead? Or is something real going on?
Well, it's something real, but it's something that's been going on for a very, very long time, right? And so, not everyone knows everybody knows the term Luddite, but not everyone knows what the Luddites were actually angry about. What the Luddites were destroying were weaving frames. They didn't like it that this new technology was going to put them out of work. And so there's always people inventing new technologies that, remove some jobs. And empirically, what seems to happen is they create more jobs. Because after centuries of technologies removing jobs, if they really always remove jobs net, there would be no jobs left by now, right? And empirically, they're not. These things, like, innovations have social consequences, and you sort of have to pay attention to what's happening and be sensitive, but you can't be hidebound because things are always changing.
So let's go back to the people who come through your door and ask for money. So you get ideas at their very, very earliest.
Yeah.
Individuals who have nothing but a laptop and an idea, in fact.
Or a mobile phone and an idea.
How many of those people come in and say, Paul, I've got a fantastic mobile app? Is that the starting point to most of your conversations now? And what is it that makes you want to hear more?
No. They don't mostly say they have a mobile app. They mostly say they have some sort of idea for satisfying some kind of market, and there's a mobile component. Very few of the startups we fund are strictly mobile apps, like a company that has a very popular game or something like that. It's more like they have a mobile component, or maybe the fact that people have phones is what makes it possible to do it. But they rarely describe themselves as apps.
So do you think in terms of a multi device world in the future rather than mobile? I mean, we're at a mobile conference here, but should we be thinking about it as a much broader and more disparate kind of computing platform?
No. I think for most people, tablets, broadly understood, meaning iPads as well. I mean, this is just a small iPad that happens to have a phone app, right? So tablets more broadly, I think are, for most people, are the future. Programmers will have what we now consider to be computers, keyboards where they will sit there and write code. But I bet you most people, like these things are just getting more and more powerful. Most people will do most of their computing with these things.
Tell us you own an iPad.
What?
You own an iPad, right?
Well, my wife has an iPad. My wife gave me an iPad, but I haven't opened it yet. She gave me an iPad when they first came out, and so this iPad would probably seem very heavy and bad. It might not even work. It's still in its box. I feel bad about that.
Well, I hear that Apple just around the corner here are really handsome new ones. So we should get a new one later on today. That might help.
Yeah,
So let's go back to what this device is going to do for people and the opportunities it creates for developers and new businesses. So you talked about your Pebble watch, which, by the way, I noticed you're not wearing today. It's quite a big investment.
I always forget to plug it in. My crappy old Timex watch has batteries in it, so if you're forgetful, it always works.
But that seems to be a fundamental issue for wearables. Right,
You've got to plug it in.
You've got to plug it in.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a problem?
Empirically, no, because I see a lot of people wearing Pebble watches, so obviously they're organized enough to actually plug them in. I think people who do a lot of texting, people who get a lot of messages need to be plugged in. I think it's really a big win for them to have the message on their wrist, because otherwise, taking your phone out of your pocket.
When you wear your Pebble watch, what do you do with it? Is text the main application?
I'm so embarrassed. I mean,
You look at the time.
Yes, I look at the time. I did not even really send a text message until I got this phone. I like the whole idea of sending messages to people constantly. It's the last thing I want. I'm like trying to escape from computers, not get more engaged with them.
Let's stick with wearables here, because for a start, it seems to give new life to the smartphone. The smartphone becomes the brains, the communication, connection, the connectivity for all of these things, even when they come.
Yeah, like Google Glass, right, or a watch. Like as computers get more powerful, you can put them in more little things. Maybe ordinary glasses will start to have computers in them if there's some advantage to it. Maybe they could have a little heads-up display giving you a bit of information. Even if all they had was driving directions or something. I'm just making things up on the fly here. But I bet you can get computers in more and more things as they get smaller.
So are you investing in wearable ideas?
Yeah, we funded a startup last batch that does the superset of Google Glass, actually, where they project a picture of a virtual world mixed together with the actual world. You can reach out and grab things, and the glasses make you think like you're actually doing it.
Does it work?
It works as well as, for considering how early it is, it works surprisingly well. It's got some rough edges. We'll see a few years.
So, let me advance one kind of possible, future for wearables in the relatively near term. We've seen with watches and the Samsung watch, a certain amount of disbelief that people are going to really want to wear these and use them. They have to plug them in. They have to find real killer apps other than just looking at text. Google Glass, it seems, is going to be a huge test for wearables. A kind of all or nothing moment, given the amount of expectation and hype that we in the media have built up around it. So, is there a danger here that the wearables hype will bust before the thing really gets going? Or do you think next year is going to be the year of wearables?
Well, I don't know about when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Imagine, never mind these fads about whether, some individual techno weenie walks around with Google Glass or not. Just think about all the industrial applications, all the people who can't carry a computer in their hands, like mechanics climbing around inside airplanes, right, or emergency workers or something like that. It's going to be so useful to be able to just display a little bit of information on some heads-up display right in front of their face. The fads aside, it's totally going to happen. I don't know when.
So next year, not necessarily next year.
It'll probably be, I doubt there will be some sort of discontinuity. It'll probably be this sort of gradually rising curve. I doubt it will have a sort of crash and then bounce back. It will just sort of gradually rise. Hard to predict exactly when, though. Because it's not, when you talk about wearables, it's not like there's some guy or company that's in charge of wearables and how fast are they going to be able to produce things. What you're really talking about is a bunch of individual people having ideas for little computers spread about the place, and you don't even know what ideas they're going to have next year. They don't even know they're going to have them yet, right? So it's very hard to predict.
What about, let's turn to the question of how you actually make money on mobile. Now, as an investor, that must be close to your heart, and yet, as an extremely early stage investor, I'm assuming that you start out by looking for the ideas they're going to catch on and worry about making the money later. So, what about the money-making models? Do you think about those right up front?
Well, I bet you, I'm guessing that this will be a domain where the most money is to be made by things that are doing things, are making money in a different way than they have in the past. So on the web, the way you make money is people do searches. On the immobile web, right? People do searches, and then you run ads that lead to some web page, and maybe they buy things. Maybe the way you make money on mobile is you start Uber, right? And you charge money for driving them around. And the mobile device is simply a way to get customers for driving them around, So I would say, don't take old models too literally, because this will change, things will be very different.
It does feel as though at least two old models really are figuring quite prominently in the early days. One is the pay-per-download idea, which kind of echoes what happened in the early days of the web, that you pay people for traffic. Well, now you pay people to get downloads of your app that they can then, but can you monetize those? The second is advertising. We always said advertising might not work on mobile. Well, Twitter, Facebook are proving it does, at least in a limited way, or in one way.
Yeah.
Are they the future, or are they just a kind of transitional point before we get to these new things?
I don't know. People don't want to do exactly the same things on a mobile phone that they do on an old, computer. Like when people are doing searches on Google, they're probably searching for things they might not search for on a mobile phone when they're buying things. When people are searching for things on a device like this, they're out and about. Although, if it's true that tablets replace computers for most people, then they will use them at home. I guess then it's just the web. I don't know yet.
Let's go back to, before we finish, I want to go back to the people who come through your door.
Okay.
Because there is now a huge competition between incubators and all these kind of startup ideas to get new ideas off the ground. So what are you looking for? Are you looking for the great idea that's going to blow everybody away? When Airbnb, when Brian Chesky came through the door, did he have the world's greatest idea, and did you just fall at his feet?
Well, complicated question. He did have a really great idea, but we did not know it.
You didn't spot it.
We thought Airbnb was a bad idea. I can remember after we accepted them saying, do people really want to stay on other people's sofas? And he said, yeah, they do. He was right. So we have a trick. Here's a trick for, because the best startup ideas tend to look like bad ideas, because the good ideas somebody's already doing, right? So you have to use the ones that seem bad but are actually good. And that's what Airbnb was. Seem bad is good.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
Very
it's
good.
Very small but non-zero overlap. By the way, by judging empirically by the people who apply to YC, people have seems bad down. So if you're going to focus on improving one aspect, work on the actually good. What saves us from missing these, because we're just pretty much, we are fooled by these ideas that seem bad too. What saves us is that we go by the founders. We were very dubious about this staying in people's airbeds thing, but the Airbnbs, its founders were very impressive. I remember that was the kind of interview where we didn't even have to talk after they left the room. During the interview, we were already sort of looking around at each other and nodding. And the reason was because the founders were so formidable, they were so energetic and so imaginative. And so it turns out people like that tend to have pretty good ideas. And in this case, they did.
But at some level, you're backing the idea.
Yeah, ultimately. Ultimately, you gotta have a good idea. Ultimately. It just, as an investor, early on, it's better to just pick people.
How good an investor are you? I think we should challenge you on this one. So how many companies have you backed in your 8 years?
564.
560.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you can have a lot of mistakes and still make money.
Yes.
How much money
We've had a lot
have
of mistakes.
How much money have you made? Or what is the value of all those startups? Now,
Those are
once
two
you still
very
make-
different things, right?
We'll come on to how much you made in a minute. Let's talk
The,
about
the
this.
reason is the most success, all the money is in the biggest successes, and the biggest successes take the longest to become liquid. You know, if someone's going to get bought for $10 million, they usually get bought pretty quickly. If a company's going to be worth billions of dollars, the way the stock becomes liquid is if they go public, and it takes companies forever to go public nowadays. So we've made very little, right? But on paper, the stock is worth a lot.
So what's the combined valuation of all these companies?
As of this morning, it was just under 13.7 billion.
So you can monitor it each day. You do monitor it each day.
Well, you know, only the big ones move it. It does change each day by like another million or so, and then it goes boom. But yes, I do monitor it each day.
And to be clear, you have names like Dropbox.
Yeah.
So that'll be a very big one. Airbnb,
Stripe,
Stripe, payments company.
Optimizely, Weebly, those are some of the big ones.
And your take, as it were, on this, or your interest in these companies gets diluted down as they grow, but
Yeah.
you still have 2 or 3%.
In the end, we guess 3%. It's hard to tell.
3%.
We don't have that much evidence yet, but we assume 3% if we have to guess.
All right. Well, there's a number to hang on to.
I don't even know what it is.
How much is that? It's a lot of money. 3% of 13 billion.
Well, on that note, we're running out of time here, so we're going to have to move on.
All right.
Delighted to see you. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you.
Thank you.